And we're back, 4-5 Radio. This is, I think, the first guest that we had back. We had Mr. Porcher back. What, 2 years ago we did something?
Probably like 2 years ago, yeah.
Yep. And a lot has changed in that time. I originally wanted you on to talk about the blog you had going, and I mean, it was more so like fashion based and stuff like that. And when I had you on, I mean, the conversation wasn't all about that. It was about what you're doing with your job. And I remember asking you, like, if you had to make a choice, whether like you want to do your job or if you had like a huge offer with your blog and you can go full time with that, which would you want to do? And you said you wanted to help people. And that really, like, that blew my mind. So like to see what you're doing today and everything that's going on, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, that whole transition to me was kind of crazy. Like when I first got involved and I decided to run for mayor, people were asking me, like, or people that didn't or just knew me from like the fashion thing, was like, well, what have you done in the community? All of a sudden you went from fashion, like, trying to run for mayor. And I'm like, listen, I've been involved in the community for the past 7 years, as well as doing the blogging thing. But for me, the blogging thing and, I had 2 websites at the time. I think when you had interviewed me, I was doing hisredcarpet.com and I had Style with Topher.
Yep.
As another website, and they were actually doing pretty well. I actually was making money off of hisredcarpet.com through ads and some individual blogging I did. I had a contract with Sports Authority at the time before they closed down. Did some stuff with JCPenney and H&M. And to me, when I went to school, when I went to college, I went and went into social work and criminology to work with people and to give back to the community. And when I was blogging, I wasn't really getting fulfilled in that sense, right? Like I feel like it was very, in a sense, superficial. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of trying to get away from that. Like I didn't want to just be on social media just to be getting likes, based off of fashion and stuff like that. It's still fun to me and it's still a hobby, but I really needed to get something that was gratifying. Right. So I, decided to actually chase my dreams and chase my passion.
Yeah. So, like, can you think back and, like, do you remember like the exact day where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. Like I'm gonna run for mayor. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I actually do. So through my job, just so for people know, I work in New Britain at a local nonprofit, Community Mental Health Affiliates, and I'm a program director. I manage 6 programs right now. So through my experience of working at CMHA, I've done a lot of city projects, and I've been able to work with the city and on the opioid task force, fighting the opioid epidemic, as we've lost a lot of people in the past 5 years. So there was an experience that I actually had with our current administration, and there was a comment that was made about our residents that live in underserved areas, particularly the North and Oak area, mm-hmm. where they were kind of just like brushed off. Like there was a comment. I'm not gonna get into detail, but there was a comment basically that said in simple terms, like, we don't really care about them. They're not taxpayers. Right. So that in that very moment, I stepped out of City Hall. I called my dad and I'm like, yo, like, listen, I have to run. Like, I literally have to run for mayor. Like, this person literally just made a comment that was unnecessary, that basically just told me that she doesn't care about our people. So it was time for me to run at that moment.
See, and so, I mean, like, for the people watching now, because, I mean, where this gets posted, it's going to be a whole different audience, mm-hmm. and it's not our target audience, right. And it's going to be more so people that either want to hear you or, mm-hmm. I mean, as you see, like in the Facebook groups, people that want to take stuff and criticize you for it. And so this is not, like, 4-5 is not a political based group. Like, we don't get involved in any of that stuff, but like knowing you and seeing what you can do for the city, that's what, like, I really want to talk about, because I was talking with some people, some kids at the Y this past weekend, and I asked them, like, do you want to stay in New Britain? And they're like, yeah. And I asked them why. Because me personally, I moved out of New Britain 3 years ago, just because, like, to me, like, there's nothing going on there. And I don't see any progress, and I don't see, like, I wouldn't want to raise my kids there. Like, I'm at the age where I'm going to have kids soon, and I would not want to raise them in New Britain. So I asked them, and they said, New Britain made me what I am today. And I 100% agree with that. And they said that they grew up with a chip on their shoulder, and because of that, that's why they would want their kids to grow up in New Britain. And I just think that's a terrible way of thinking, because, like, what do you know the graduation rate for New Britain High, like, off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I do know that the graduation rate has has increased.
Has it?
But we'll get. So I'll go back to what you were saying before. So your feeling of not wanting to live in New Britain is not, you like, obviously you're not the only person that feels that way.
Yeah.
And there's also many of us that like die hard New Britain, like we're gonna stay in New Britain for the rest of our lives, and that's okay too. But what it really takes is to really start those conversations. So starting that conversation at the YMCA is extremely important. And one thing I want people to understand is that you don't have to go into politics or be a community activist to start talking about community issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes people like me, it takes people like you, it takes people like the group, to really get involved and to start, discussing community issues like graduation rates and why people want to live here, why people don't, if you want to raise a family here or not. You could be in the creative space and still talk about community issues because it still affects you to this day, right? And that's another reason why I got involved. As I'm 28 years old, and again, at the time of, wanting to buy a home and wanting to eventually have kids, it's like, well, I have to start making those decisions too. Do I want to raise my kids here? Do I want to buy a house in New Britain with high taxes? Majority of my friends that have gotten married or have kids have moved out. They've moved to like Newington or Bristol or Plainville because they think, or they believe the school system is better.
Right.
The taxes are a little bit cheaper. And people don't feel like there's anything to do in New Britain, even from the creative aspect, right? Not just thinking about, okay, what are our kids going to do after school, but for individuals like us with a creative mindset, there's not really any outlet for us to be creative.
You got to go somewhere else.
Right? You got to go somewhere else. I mean, when I was doing it full time and doing it heavy, I wasn't in New Britain. I was in Hartford, I was in New Haven, or I was in New York, right? There was nothing for us
exactly
to do
the same for me.
So that conversation is important, but what it takes is not people leaving the city, is people staying in New Britain or moving out but still staying involved and ensuring that we bring those resources to the community and put new leadership in office that can support that cause and ensure that we're bringing that creative space to the city of New Britain, which I think is a bigger issue, that we don't have the resources that we need, like Hartford, or that culture, because it's not accepted, it's not talked about. When you look at Hartford's current mayor, Luke Bronin, I've been at a number of events that are creative events and art spaces and fashion related that he's present, mm-hmm. and that he's having conversations with these individuals. And I've never seen that in the past 6 years or during my time of trying to, in the creative space from our current administration.
Yeah, at all. And like, that's huge to me. That's something I was going to bring up as well, just because what programs are there for kids that that's what I'm so worried about, the kids. Like, I just feel like, I think every generation says, well, wow, they just keep getting worse. And like, I don't know if I'm getting old, but I really feel that way. Like, things are getting worse. Like, these kids they're not playing sports. And so what are they doing? And like, so that needs to be talked about.
Right. So from my social work perspective is that society has absolutely completely changed.
Yeah. So
when I grew up, I mean, we played video games, but there was a sense of community. We were on our bikes, we was outside, we was play fighting, we was climbing trees, we were in the woods, we were playing games, playing basketball, football. I can speak from my experience with having two brothers at one's 15, one's 16, and these dudes literally don't leave the house. Like, they're legit in the house playing video games. They go to school, they play video games, they're on their phones, they're texting. But as society has progressed and changed with technology, we've really lost a sense of community, which also affects our kids in the programming that we have today. Is that we really need to ensure that we are shifting the culture, which I truly believe in. We have to shift the culture to bring back that sense of community in New Britain, and not just New Britain, but in all towns, but also create the programs that support that. The programs that we had when we were younger are still there. It's just that they're being underutilized. As times continue to be rough for families and parents are working more than one job, people don't have the investment to put their kids in certain programs.
Right.
We have a lot of single parent households where, the parent can't necessarily support the financially support the kid in that program or provide the transportation. So we really need to just look at what are the resources in our community that are being provided to the parents as far as our jobs available. What are the current struggles that our families are going through? Perfect example, look at the Boys and Girls Club. When I went to the Boys and Girls Club, it was $25 to go to the Boys and Girls Club. It is now over $200 to be a Boys Club member.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. Families cannot afford that. That's just not going to happen. If I was young right now and I asked, and my mom, there was three of us. There is no way she was putting three of us in the Boys and Girls Club for $200 a piece.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So we have to kind of find ways to offset that, right? We need a more innovative city, more innovative programming. Like, how do we get more innovative with including our state party? How do we bring more grants into the community to ensure that we're supporting our kids? Right now, we don't have anyone at the city level advocating for our youth, right? Of course, we need to have conversations about taxes and changing our education system, and which is a big piece. But we also have to have someone saying, like, listen, we need programs here in New Britain that support our kids and support our kids in the creative space. Just having an after a school program is like, okay, well, what does that mean, right? As you know, times are changing, society changes. We need to start creating programs that make sense. How many of our kids want to go into technology or programming or some sort of IT, some sort of creative space like this? I'm sure you guys heard of Paradigm.
What is it?
In New Britain, it's a group that works with young kids that are interested in media. So they come out, they do a lot of media, they do interviews. They've interviewed the current mayor, they've interviewed me, they've interviewed other individuals, which I think that's a great start, right?
Yeah.
But we need something like that, but we need to ensure that they have the financial backing, so we don't just have them for 2 years and then they can't support themselves anymore.
Right. So I mean, where does the funding come from? Because I feel like every time I'm reading a post or an article, the comments are always about funding. So how does that work on the city level? Like, does the funding come from the state, and then like there's one source, and then it's broken down into little stuff, or like how is it allocated?
So as far as the city budget and the funding, some of the funding comes from our taxpayers, right?
Okay.
So our homeowners, our people who own cars, pay taxes, business owners. About over $100 million of the city budget is taxpayer dollars. The rest of it comes from the state. Because we are an underserved city and considered an inner city, the state does provide us a lot of money for our Board of Education and for a number of other programs. Once that pot of money and the taxpayer dollars come into the city, then the city then allocates a certain amount of money to the Board of Ed. They go into the departments like Public Works, Parks and Rec, the Water Department, and they kind of get split amongst the two. And then we get a number of grants for other programs across the city as well.
So like, what would you personally do to get more? Because if there's not enough out there, then obviously we need more. We need more money, and is that the root of all? Is that the cause of everything? Just not enough money, or is it the people behind it?
So I have a different perspective. I don't think money solves everything. In a community like New Britain, we really need grassroots efforts. So one of my jobs, and one thing that I've been working on before I even decided to run for mayor, is literally getting involved in the community and creating leadership within the communities, right? Individuals just like us. How do we go back into our communities, into our neighborhoods, and be a role model or an example for a young kid that looks like us, that has the same dreams as us, and how do we bring them along? And I think that's where it really starts. Yeah, we need the money to support programming, but we don't need money to support people like hand in hand,
right?
In a sense. And I think that we're missing that, because you can pump in let's say we had $30 million in our pocket right now. All right, we're going to put this into the community. But what necessarily does that mean, right? We need to find, you can open a program and hire a whole bunch of people from Berlin, but if those people in Berlin don't identify with the kids in New Britain or look like the kids in New Britain, then how beneficial is the program?
Right.
So those are the conversations that we need to start having, is that we need to invest in the community to keep people here, to have those people in the programming, to have those people in the community, and start creating more of those grassroots conversation. Just like, I think this is amazing. And if we were ever able to get young kids that are interested in doing media or being in the creative space and having them be a part of this, or just kind of sitting down and watching what you guys do, if you're helping one person, that's just a start.
Oh, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like after school programs they're so important. And that's something I've been thinking about recently. Like, what if they gave us a space and we can go and do something? Or like, I think of Shump. Like, Shump produces, and I'm sure there's tons of kids out there that would love to produce. So like, why? Like, the stuff like that needs to be brought up and started, and people need to reach out and try to initiate that.
So that's the thing. The city does have special funding, like grant funding, that can go to certain local nonprofits or certain groups, and at any given time, the administration can say, okay, we want to allocate this money or support this project. But that's the thing. Like, we don't have anyone in City Hall thinking outside the box, and that's why it's so important to get young people involved and to get young people paying attention to politics and holding the administration accountable. Because again, if you don't have anyone that is of age or thinking outside of the box or understands this type of creative space, then who's going to advocate for it?
Right.
Right. So that's absolutely something that I want to pay attention to is when I get into city hall. It's like, okay, like how do we support creative programs? How do we support young people that are trying to start businesses that make sense for the city of New Britain? How do we start having these conversations and letting people like us sit at the table, right, and having these conversations? Because it's bigger than just having, again, like a normal Parks and Recs program, but how do we get this situation right here to be a program, right, to support kids? Like, how do we give you guys funding to support what you're doing, but also to bring people along? Those are the conversations that absolutely have to be had, but they won't happen if we don't become present.
Right. And it might have been like 2 or 3 years ago now. I put together a huge idea. I wanted to have a festival. Like, you know how they have like Rolling Loud in Miami, and like now that's nationwide, and there's tons of music festivals going on. So I put together everything. Like anything you need to put together a festival, I put together the whole budget, everything. We reached out to the mayor, no response. Then a few weeks later, some company held like, we had 2 portions of the festival, so they kind of like took a portion of it and turned it into their own thing in the parking lot at New Britain Stadium. So I'm like, okay. So I sent it to a bunch of my friends. I'm like, look what's going on. So they go on Twitter and they're tweeting at the mayor. That's when she finally responded to us. She wants to set up a meeting. Justin Dorsey reaches out. He's trying to sue things out. So after talking with him for 2 months, that's when we finally got our meeting with her. And the first thing that comes out her mouth was, so you guys are the assholes talking shit on Twitter. So I'm like, okay. Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's crazy.
I'm 26 now, so I was probably 23, 24 then. So relatively young, yes, but what I'm trying to do and the way I went about it, I did everything the right way. And even if you don't, let me say this first. I do think she's a good mayor. I don't think she's a good person. And I think some of the ideas she has, like they're not moving forward, and they're not like, you got to look at what New York does and what Boston does and what Miami does and what LA does, and at least try to bring something of that to New Britain, just because like they're thinking big. They're thinking what can make money, what can bring people out. Like, imagine having a festival and people flying from another country to New Britain.
Well, there's 2 things. You can't think outside of the box when you're only thinking for yourself, and I think that's the problem that we have right now in the city, is that everything is very self-centered, of like how the administration could get recognized and what special things can they do for New Britain. Like, if it's not their interest or if it's not their idea, they don't want it to happen, right? So if you have an idea, we're either going to steal it or we're not going to do it at all. And that's kind of just been the MO for the past 6 years. And again, like, I think what you just said is that we don't have anyone thinking outside the box, and you can't be a good mayor and not be a good person. Right.
Yeah.
To be a good leader.
That's how I feel with the president too.
Right. To be a good leader, you have to be a good person. So, those 2 absolutely go together. And I never speak on her personally because I don't know her personally, but what I've seen as far as her leadership, I absolutely don't agree with what's been happening in the city. But to go back to the festival idea, is that, again, when you have young people coming to you asking you to do things and to have these ideas, like, it shouldn't take 2 months to get a meeting, right?
Yeah.
Like, I understand busy. Like, I oversee 6 departments. I have 100 people under my supervision. Like, I understand busy. We're all busy, but you have to make time for the city residents, especially if it's us that's paying your salary, right? 2 months to get a meeting is absolutely ridiculous, and to get that response is, again, just simple terms, like, that's insane. But those ideas are great, but again, we have to, how you navigated the situation was also important. And that's what a lot of young people don't know, is like, how do you utilize your councilman or councilwoman that is in your neighborhood, right? A lot of people, if I go and I ask someone like, who's your councilman, they won't know, right? Every New Britain split up into 5 wards. Each ward has a councilman. And that role of the councilman or the councilwoman is to bring issues to the mayor or to bring them publicly to the council meeting. So if you went with your friends or whatever group you were at the time, and you went to the council meeting and you knew about the council meeting and there's public participation, you went up and said, listen, this is the event that I'm trying to bring to the city. You've now held the city accountable for addressing your issue right away.
You know the funny thing? So they told me, they said, go to that meeting, bring it up, and we could talk about it. I said, all right, cool. I show up. They told me to go on the wrong day. So it's like, it's like they're purposely giving me the runaround, just trying to say, all right, just give it up.
Right.
And it's sad because like when we finally did have that conversation with her, she's like, we really are trying to bring a nightlife to New Britain. And, if you guys can help that, because like we throw parties and we've had huge parties in Hartford, huge parties in Plainville, huge parties in Bristol, never in New Britain. Why? Because venues don't want to rent out their space. And if they do, they're charging an arm and a leg. So like I think the VFW is like the only spot that has a really good size and is an okay price, but even like that, it's just played out. Like we need something new. We don't just need like a big room. Like we need sound. Like we need more. And why don't we have that? Like there's nightlife in New Britain. There's people come in New Britain and they leave to go like to Hartford or wherever else.
There's no innovation. And I talk about that all the time. When I went to Central, I lived on campus for 2 years and then I commuted the next 2 years. But the first 2 years, like whenever we went out, like we never went out in New Britain. We legit went to Hartford again,
West Hartford.
Like we never went out in New Britain. And that's, it's the administration literally has to set the culture, right? From the police officers, from the business owners to a perfect example when Division West in West Hartford turned into a club. Me and my friends went there a couple of times. When I walked in, I'm like, yo, like 90% of the people in this club are from New Britain. Like there's no reason why these same people can't be in New Britain, right? But the reason is like when everyone's leaving Division West, the cops are outside. They're being cool. Like, all right, move along. All right, talking to people, being friendly. And if we don't set that culture in New Britain, we'll never have a nightlife.
Right.
Any type of club or anything that we've ever tried to have, and my dad and his friends tried to have a club, Papa's Pub at one point, and cops are just straight assholes, like all the time. Like we could never have any type of nightlife. Of course, people do come out and act stupid, right? Like we have that. We have that issue too. We can't deny that, but we also have to change the culture and the administration at the top to say, all right, so maybe we need to have some type of flexibility, make sure people get home safe, not be an asshole, move people around, work with the people who are planning the parties and the business owners to bring the nightlife. And again, because I think it takes two, not just City Hall or me as a mayor, but the people that are trying to bring the nightlife, or holding the people that are coming to the party accountable, and making sure we're keeping things safe and not rowdy.
And the thing is,
when I was in college, we had I don't know if you remember International.
Yeah,
we had International, but there was always something.
Yeah. But I mean, if you compare that to what's available now, like it's night and day. It was never even close.
Right.
And like that's the thing. Like I just I could always say like I wish we had this, I wish we had that, and like when is it gonna happen? Because I think another issue is when someone wants to do something, like the resources aren't there for them to do it. Like there's no one there to say, okay, this is where you start, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to get, and this is what's gonna get you here. And from there, like you keep going, like what's the path? And a lot of people say, okay, well, yeah, do the research, you can figure that out yourself. Like there should be someone that says, okay, like here, let me hold your hand along the way because we wanna see this happen. We wanna see this brought to New Britain. We wanna see that. And there's no one doing that.
And that's true. And that goes along with a lot of things. It means people trying to have parties, trying to start businesses, like to start a small business in New Britain, like to navigate City Hall is horrible, right? So you got to jump through hoops. And we need a process that is like, okay, like, all right, I want to rent a venue. I want to do this. I want to get a permit for something. Like, how can I walk through that easy? Like, how can someone in City Hall or walk me through that process easier to be able to do it? And we literally should be promoting that stuff. Like you said, innovative Boston, even Hartford, New Haven, 100% different than New Britain.
New Britain,
like the nightlife out there is just crazy. And what gets me the worst is that like we have a university in New Britain, like a large university. There's no reason why we don't have nightlife here.
Yeah,
like students from Central should not be going to other towns to party or to have fun. Like we legitimately should be downtown New Britain or somewhere in New Britain bringing revenue into the city. There's no innovation. That's what it is. And people aren't open to new ideas. Like even like our downtown district, which is kind of separate than City Hall. There's a board that runs downtown business district, which a lot of people don't know that as well. That's where they kind of make the decisions about what's happening downtown, what type of events are happening downtown. And it's again, the same dudes that are like in their 60s and 70s that have been on the downtown district for like 15, 20, 30 years that don't think outside the box, right? Like at some point, the owner of the toy store, Amorio's, was the chair of the committee. Like, like he's not thinking like we think, like he's just not, right? Like those are just facts. So when we're trying to bring stuff downtown, they're just already like, they're denying the ideas. They're not even open to hearing what we have to say.
And it's like that for so many places. Like I remember we had I forget, I'm not gonna say, we had someone on and he's in a position where like his bosses, like they're just super old and outdated, and like for him being younger, like he wants to do something where he works, and it's so hard because they're living in like the 80s and 90s culture and they don't see the future, and like it's so important to have vision.
But the thing is, so my question to you guys though would be like, so how do you change it though, right? And my answer is always going to be is that we have to change it by doing it. So I deal with this now. People on Facebook that, like you said, people have comments. They always have something negative to say, right? But not one of you that have something negative to say on Facebook decided to run for mayor. So as long as we continue to, people are always going to try to keep us oppressed and keep us marginalized and kind of not give us the resources that we need. But it literally is going to take us to change the system. And I talk about this a lot. Like we have to change the system, penetrate the system. Even as a manager now, I flipped my department to make sure that my department was extremely diverse. African American, Hispanic, old group, young employees, because that was important to me. And even in the organization I work for, I'm only one of, I think 3 African American managers. So my goal is to always change the system. As I continue to move up, I'm going to try to keep hiring more diverse groups. As I see issues with New Britain, I'm still going to get involved in politics. If I see issues with the downtown district, there's someone that is now involved in that. If things don't change, and maybe I need to get involved with that myself. So that's what we need to do. We need to give people the platforms. Like just because you're a creative or you're a designer or a musician or artist doesn't mean that that's not your platform, right? And I think people try to stick to one thing, like, okay, I'm a rapper and I have I'm trying to do all these events in New Britain and no one's really supporting me. All right, so how about you need to be the rapper and you need to be the person that's on that. It was on the downtown district. You need to be the rapper. You need to be the person that's on that committee. And that's where my goal is to change the mindsets of the young people. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I was blogging and I was doing fashion and I went to school for this and I'm helping people with this, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a right to say how I think New Britain politics should be, right? So we just got to come together and make sure we change that.
So how can we do that? Like let's say it starts with you. How can we get more people together to where it's us, and I'm not saying like we just get all these old people the fuck out of here, but where we can integrate with them and we have a say in what's going on. How does that happen?
Unfortunately, it's like that thing, you got to make it cool, right? Like you got to make it cool, unfortunately. And I kind of relate it to fashion. Is when I first got into the fashion game, I think it was like 2010, 2009, I was in college and started like kind of being myself and dressing myself. Like everyone was not fucking with it. Like it just, that's what the facts were, right? Like people said, oh, that's corny. It was either corny, it was gay, it was something. Yeah. 2 years later, like everyone wants to hop on it. Everybody want to be a blogger. Everybody want to do this. Like, so that's just what the facts is, right? Like how do we look at Kanye West for an example, right? How many people probably mess with gospel music? Let's give it like 3 months. Everybody's gonna be messing with gospel music in 3 months. Like, think so? I guarantee. Do
you like the album?
There was a few good songs. Yeah. I think it was it kind of came. I'm actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm really into music. I listen to any type of artist I release, like rather be country, rather be rap, like R&B. I listen to albums probably multiple times when they come out. So I've already listened to his album 4 times since he released it. But it kind of felt rushed in a sense and not like his best work. Right. But there were some dope songs on there as far as like music, like actual music. And being a person who grew up in the church, I think that it was all right. But it wasn't his best. Okay. I think he's dealing with some mental health issues right now.
I hear that. But that's a really good analogy though.
But no, for real, I think that it's like the more people that, I'm glad that I got involved and Devon got involved as well, because now people are looking at it differently. Like this is the first time that we've gotten people more of our age to pay attention to politics, right? So I think now it's going to be encouraging people to get involved and just start getting thinking outside the box.
So these Facebook groups, like when you see all these negative comments and you see the positive comments, like how do you what's your filter? How do you read through it and just say, like it's whatever?
I actually don't really pay attention to social media and comments. And I think it comes with really being confident in yourself. Like at the end of the day, people say stuff that literally doesn't make sense, right? Like people will say like, oh, he just got involved in a community last year. Like that's absolutely false. So like that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I've been involved in a community for 7 years. And when I was doing fashion heavy, I was still involved in a community. I had 3 fundraisers, 3 fashion shows that were fundraisers for pancreatic cancer. When I was doing fashion, I had an event at a place in Hartford where I did a panel discussion for young kids. I had police officer Joey Franchise, Firebomb, and we talked about community issues and giving back to the community and creating creative space. So I've been doing that. So no one has really said anything that can be validated. So when I just look at it, I literally just like laugh. Like it's
my favorite one that I saw was some guy. He said something to you, and like he called you out on something, and you replied. And you said, "Yeah, I'm the same guy that knows your son, and I was in JROTC with your son, and me and him are friends." And I'm like, okay, like that was the perfect response.
Yeah, because people literally say anything, and it's just like it's sad at the same time because like you're trolling, but you need to like put this energy somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like
they forget like we're in the same town, like we know the
town.
same people, like we're gonna see each other.
Yeah. It's like, don't get me wrong. I feel like, people are going to have their political opinions. Right? You're either going to support this person or you're going to support that person.
And that's fine.
But that's fine. And there's a way to be respectful. But what makes me not really care about it is that you guys, like that guy attacked like my last name. Like, oh, why does his last name have so many R's in it or something like that? I'm like, yo, if that's all you could say about me, then I really don't care what you have to say. Right? Like you need to talk about something that I've done bad for the community or some bad decisions that I've made. But if you can't do that, then your statements are kind of irrelevant. Like, right? Like no one could take away the fact that for the past 7 years, I've purposely worked in New Britain. I've served over, 1,000 clients individually as a person who worked with people one-on-one. I've been in and out of the community. And, to this day, I consider myself to be probably a pretty decent employee.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you had to change just one thing about New Britain, just one, what would that be?
So if I had to change one thing, it would definitely be the knowledge of our people, of our young generation, of just not people of color, Hispanic, African Americans. I talked about this last night. I had an event where I said, a lot of people ask me, what's the biggest thing that I've learned from this experience? And the biggest thing that I've learned is how uninformed people are. Literally, like how uninformed our community is. And the reasons that we're in the situations that we're in now is that the system has found a way to keep us oppressed and to keep us marginalized, right? Where people don't know who their council people are. Like that's the issue. People don't know when council meetings are. That's the issue. People don't know anything about how the city government works or the city charter or the taxes work. That's a problem, right? Like this is stuff that we should be learning absolutely in school. And this is what our communities deserve access to. So if you have a whole bunch of people in an underserved area, like just think of like the North and Oak area, right?
Yeah.
And these people are dealing with black mold in their apartment. There's contamination in the soil. There's sidewalks that if whoever's in a wheelchair can't even roll themselves up and down the sidewalk. There's streets that haven't been paved in 15 years. If the person doesn't know who to bring that information to, then whose problem is that? Like it's literally our job, the city's job, to let people know, right? There's an emergency at your house, you're gonna call 911, right? Like that, like that is a fundamental that like we all know. But people, one thing I could change, if I could change, is just like ensuring that we literally just, if we had the chance to educate everyone in the community on how the system works, that would be my one thing I would like to change. It sounds really like educational, but it's important. It's deep,
and like that's why like when I talk to these kids, like that might not be stuff I'm talking about, but that's stuff they should be hearing. And like you telling me that, like I'm gonna tell them, because like that's just like I can't stress enough. Like that's what I'm really worried about. Like when I go to the Y and like I'm playing basketball with like these high school kids, and bro, it's just it's scary. Like it really scares me because I don't want stuff like to head where it's heading, and there needs to be a change. And I just don't think New Britain High is getting the attention it needs to get. Like they need help. The entire school needs help, and they need guidance, and they need programs. And whatever is there isn't enough.
So my opinion on that, being a graduate from New Britain High School, I think New Britain High has made definitely progress. We have there's programs when we were there, right? Like the automotive program, JROTC, like all this, the medical program. Now they have a finance program, engineering, like all this stuff that they're building. The issue is that the school's overcrowded, right?
Yeah.
The school is way too overcrowded. We absolutely need a second high school. There's people that graduate from New Britain High School that go to amazing, not that college is for everybody, but there's people that go to amazing colleges. One of my best friends, she's a neurologist today. She graduated the same year I did, went to UConn, and now she's a doctor, right? There's success stories, and she got the same education that me and you got.
Right.
So the issue is that the school's too overcrowded, that when you have kids or students that aren't at the top of their class, which is fine, our teachers can't give the attention to those students, the attention that they need, because there's 30, 35 kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
Right? So when people look at these magnet schools and why these magnet schools have 99% graduation rates, because there's 15 kids in the class, right? So when there's 15 and 12 kids in the class, then there's no other thing but to succeed.
Yeah,
right?
they're getting all the help they can get. They're getting all the attention they can get.
All the attention that they can get. And that's the problem. We have too many people mixed within classrooms. The classroom sizes are way too big. I think that New Britain High can definitely use more programs, but I also think that we have decent programs and good programs, that we have more programs than a lot of, like Farmington. New Britain High School has way more programs than Farmington High has. That's fact.
The thing is, I bet the programs that New Britain High has relates more to the Farmington students. And that's what I mean. Like, think about how diverse, like it's amazing how diverse New Britain High is. Right. And like, I'm so proud, like I was able to grow up in that, but all those programs don't relate to all the cultures that we have there. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we need more of, like,
that's one thing I talk about on my platform is, with the school system, is that it's not just about bringing more money to the Board of Ed, but it's about changing the curriculum. The curriculum is ancient. All school systems have an old ass curriculum. We need to start looking like how do we teach our kids? Does it need to be more hands-on? Does it need to be more creative programs? When we look at our music program, is the music program just being in band? Or do we need to start implementing like a music program where you can start learning how to produce, to create beats, to stuff like that? When you're looking at a program about just being art, like being into the arts, it's not just about drawing. It's about like how many do you want to get into design? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? I think those are the conversations that we have to start having. But we need to do that in partnering with our school. And that's I was at an educational conference about a month ago, and I said, we have a university in our town. There's a lot of other cities and states that partner with their colleges, right? There's no reason why we can't have our students at New Britain High School going into Central programs, or Central coming into New Britain High doing this stuff. When I got into Central, reason how I got into blogging is because I joined the design club. Like, we put on a fashion show, we made clothes, we went on trips, we went to New York Fashion Week. Right, like I shouldn't have had to wait to college to get into that. I also had another friend that was in a music club at Central, a music program. He did beats and did all this, like did producing and all this stuff. But we need to start bringing that stuff out of the colleges and putting it into the high school.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, if they get started early, then that's where you see the talent.
Because there are kids that do want to go into finance and that do want to be nurses.
And that's great. Like, we need those people, but like you said,
still need that.
It's not for everybody.
Right, but we need to start shifting the culture to catch up with the times, because like, we're no longer in 1950, like it's 2019.
Yeah. So I mean, like I'm gonna bring him up again. Like, shout out to Shump. Like, this guy just had a record with platinum selling artist, and he just got 1 million views on YouTube. So like, that deserves recognition. Like, people should be talking about that. Like, he's from New Britain. Like, this guy, like, he's working with an artist that's signed to a major label. Like, that's her prime producer. Like, that needs to be talked about. That's inspiration for kids. That's someone that kids can be looking up to. He needs a platform. Yeah. Like, get him involved in a program. They should be reaching out to him.
Yeah, we absolutely need a platform that discusses the good that comes out of New Britain, like the talent, not just athletes, right? Like, we have
and even athletes don't get enough recognition.
Yeah, we have Jones, we have my cousin George Springer. We have other people too, but even in the music industry, like Shump and just a few other people that I think deserve recognition, but we have to create a platform for it. Absolutely. I think, again, that goes with thinking outside of the box in the city, is that, okay, we don't need to just be talking about like, okay, we built a new bridge or we slapped some nice pretty bricks downtown. what's the talent that we have in our town, and like how do we start creating press releases about that, putting it into our newspaper, putting it into our media, and supporting that. Because right now it's all about who you know, and not who you know, but what's gonna seem popular, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
like, what looks good.
Well, what looks good? So the mayor would go do a ribbon cutting and for a new business by a black business owner, and everyone's all like, "Oh, the mayor's there. The business owner is black." Like, no, like that's literally just for pictures. That's not because someone cares, right?
Yeah.
And I see that on Facebook now at a new store that opened downtown. I'm like, her and her husband are not buying clothes from there, so stop.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad she did the ribbon cutting, but like, what?
Take it a step further, like,
Right. Take it a step further, right? Like let's do more. Let's support everybody. You know, even I remember, like I said, I've always been into music. A lot of people don't know this, but I don't know if you know G Bird.
Yeah, of course. Come on.
Yeah. So when he was doing music, like I was like one of his biggest supporters, like all time. And I was always trying to like manage him, or like I always tell him like, Leo, let me manage you. Like we need to get you like, out there. And when I was working with him, that was one of the biggest things too. Like, right, like how do we bring a safe platform for musicians, for rappers to have a platform in New Britain to kind of recognize the talent that we have, and not just at like a culture level, but like at the city level too. And that was something that we tried. We tried to, at that time, I tried to get at the park, the Dome, to put on like a little concert, but they weren't having it.
I tried there too, so it's sad. It's super sad.
Yeah, but when you got to get someone in that's going to change it. That's going to be willing to risk, right? Yeah. We're not willing to risk. We're willing to risk spending money and refinancing all this debt higher in our taxes, but we're not really willing to risk for our residents and for the talent and for the students that we have.
That's the thing. Like I just want them to try. Like people need to try, and the money and all that, like that can come after. Figure it out. Anything can be figured out. So let's just make it happen. And
well, you have to have someone that is business savvy and also in like understands the creative space, because the money is important, right? We have to protect our taxpayers and make sure that we're not just like bringing, like when this administration came into office, we had $309 million in debt. Right now, 6 years later, we are $458 million in debt. Like that's huge, right? We have the fourth highest mill rate in the state. Our mill rate is 50.5 now. Like 10, 15 years from now, it's going to be in the 70s. Like that's huge. So we need someone that is going to be able to, like you said, you talked about Devon. Like I respect Devon for all the work that he's done, but we need someone that has like organizational experience, that can sit at the table with individuals, have business conversations, understand budgeting, understand big dollars, and managing millions of dollars. What I do now, I manage budgets that are over $1 million. Have that type of conversation. You need someone that can sit at the table and do that, but you also need someone that can sit at the table and say, listen, like this is what we need, like from a creative perspective, like from a culture perspective. Like our kids are, like you just said, right? Every kid's not built for the finance program. Like what else can we do for the kids? How can we get our artists recognized, our business owners recognized, our individuals in the creative space recognized?
Right. That's huge. So, I mean, I have nothing else for you. I mean, this was a great conversation, and this is what I wanted. I just wanted to talk. I mean, like people get so wound up in the politics and they just forget like we're people, and like sometimes we just want to talk and we want to express ourselves.
No, so for real. Like I legit tell people, like I'm not here to politic, y'all. Like I'm literally just here to have real conversations with people, represent people, bring the needs to New Britain, bring whatever we need to New Britain that's going to help the vast majority, not just one type of person, and to get younger people involved. And when I went on November 5th, like one of my goals is literally to get young people at the table, like outside of people that are on the council, setting up some type of ongoing meeting that involves young people at the table.
That's great. So it's 4-5 Radio. Vote for my boy right here, please. I mean, we need change.
November 5th.
November 5th.
Listen, and when you guys come, if you live in New Britain and you come to the polls on November 5th, don't come by yourself. Bring somebody, bring a cousin, bring a friend, bring a sibling. Go with your parents. Make sure you're at least with 5 people that you go vote with.
When's the latest date they can register?
So the last day to register was yesterday, unfortunately, but you can bring your license. When you go to vote, bring your license and you might be able to register the day of.
Okay.
Well, you should be. You should be.
Do it. Do something. I mean, just do it. Why not? Figure it out. I'll give you a ride. Hit me up. 4-5. We out.